By Dawn's Early Light, the episode that introduced us to Columbo royalty in the form of Patrick McGoohan, the man who would go on to be one of the show's most frequent collaborators on both sides of the camera. It's one of the most important episodes of the series. It won 2 Emmy Awards and is a perennial fan favorite. I don't love it.
Why not?
Look, don't get me wrong. I love McGoohan. I think he's wonderful, as he is in all of his episodes. This is actually his most restrained performance by a long shot, far removed from his usual excessive eccentricities, playing Colonel Lyle C. Rumford, head of the prestigious boys-only Haynes Military Academy. Much like Adrian Carcini and his beloved winery, Rumford doesn't have much of a life outside of the academy. Scratch that, he has no life outside of the academy. So it's not good news when Board of Trustees President William Haynes informs him that a big shakeup is on the horizon, and Rumford is soon to be put out to pasture. To add insult to injury, the school is to be made co-ed. This certainly won't do for a staunch traditionalist like the Colonel, so Haynes is for the chopping block. Or maybe that should be the blasting block. Or the booming block? Or the blowing block? Okay, you know what? Rumford rigs a ceremonial cannon to explode while Haynes is firing it during the Academy's Founders' Day celebrations. The blame for the supposed accident falls on a troublesome cadet named Springer, who seems to have left a cleaning rag inside the cannon while sprucing it up. However, Columbo finds it odd that Springer immediately identifies the rag as a cleaning rag, whereas Rumford seems to have some trouble.
Do you know what this is, sir?
No idea.
Next, he discovers that the shell in the cannon itself has been tampered with the usually harmless sodium nitrate replaced with the far more powerful gelignite. This points Columbo away from an accident and towards murder. The discovery of a set of blueprints in Bill Haynes' car is what finally sets the lieutenant's sights on Colonel Rumford. The blueprints are for the layout of the revamped academy, depicting, among other things, the presence of a girl's bathroom.
I mean, I don't want to be indelicate, sir. But if this is a boys' locker room, there's something missing.
No urinals.
Now that he's established a motive, all Columbo has to do is prove it was Rumford who sabotaged the cannon on the morning of the ceremony. And the final clue comes in the form of clandestine cider brewing, of all things.
Cider?
See, some of the boys at the academy have been cooking up cider in their dormitory and hanging it out of the window to ferment in the early hours of the morning. This way nobody will see the cider, since it's against school rules to have it. Rumford, however, spots the cider while rigging the cannon and becomes obsessed with tracking down the culprits.
Gentlemen, I realize that it's early in the day, and this may take some hours.
Hours?
But someone in this dormitory is fermenting cider. And no matter how long it takes, I intend to find the cider and punish the culprits. Understood?
Sir, yes, sir!
Understood? Yes, sir!
It's this absolute dedication to being such a stickler for the rules that proves his downfall. The only time the cider was visible was during the very early morning as the sun comes up, and the only way to be able to see it was to be standing right next to the cannon. This conclusively places Rumford at the scene of the crime, and all because he couldn't let the cider thing go. If he'd never admitted to having seen it, he'd have been home and dry, but his sense of duty ultimately betrayed him. It's a fitting end for the character, the most complex murderer of Season 4.
Don't you expect me to be contrite, Lieutenant? It had to be done, and I'd do it again tomorrow.
As mentioned previously, Rumford reminds of Adrian Carcini, a man with only one thing to live for, a man willing to kill if that thing was ever threatened in any way. He's a sad and lonely man who's dedicated his entire life to the military, and he'll be damned if anyone comes between him and his duty. McGoohan carries himself with a regal sense of authority throughout, always confident and in control, but with a constant hint of melancholy behind the eyes. He and Falk are great together, the characters clearly developing a mutual respect for one another as the case progresses. In fact, despite his hard-ass demeanor, Rumford is one of the few killers to never grow angry with Columbo. He remains patient and measured in all of their interactions, even right up until the final confrontation. Like Carcini, I think that Rumford sees in Columbo an absolute dedication to perfection in his line of work, and Columbo sees that in Rumford too. In another life, maybe these two could have been friends, but it just wasn't meant to be. Indeed, the best and most poignant scene of the story comes when the Colonel speaks about the life he could have had, if not for the wars that are always needing to be fought.
When that stops, hang up the uniform. I'll hang up my uniform. I'll go and take care of my backyard. I got some roses. White roses.
It's a quiet and beautiful scene, superbly acted by McGoohan, who won an Emmy for his performance in this episode. I'd imagine it was this scene alone that sealed that deal.
Done a very nice job.
Falk also won an Emmy for his portrayal of Columbo this season, his third win for the character.
This is a first-rate cigar.
So then, why did I say I don't love this one? Well, because I just don't, and that's really all there is to it, I'm afraid. There's nothing really wrong with this episode, no major plot holes or stupid character decisions to piss me off. I can't tear it apart in the way I did, say, Mind Over Mayhem or The Most Dangerous Match. It's got a solid script from Howard Burke with solid direction by Harvey Hart. The trail of clues leading Columbo to suspect and eventually entrap Rumford are all pretty good and well laid out. The Cannon murder is clever, and while the gotcha is extremely low-key, it is fitting for this particular episode. But I just don't find myself revisiting this one all too often. It's very dry, with not a lot of humor to be found, which also makes it feel very long. It's another 2-hour episode, and it's a very noticeable 2 hours. There's nothing inherently wrong with Columbo's interactions with the supporting cast, but I find none of it very compelling. The actors are all good, but there's no one very memorable. There's no Goldie or Wilson or Mrs. Peck in this episode. There is Sergeant George Kramer, played by Bruce Kirby. Kirby had previously appeared as a lab technician in Lovely But Lethal, but would go on to appear as Sergeant Kramer in a total of 6 episodes, making Kramer the most recurring character on Columbo other than the lieutenant himself and Dog. Kirby's son, Bruno Kirby, has a small role as one of the Academy's cadets. He later became well known for his roles in comedy films such as City Slickers and When Harry Met Sally, both times playing opposite Billy Crystal. Billy Crystal as a Columbo killer, I wonder if that would have worked. Elsewhere, Rumford's Boodle Boy, Cadet Miller, is played by Robert Clotworthy, nowadays best known as a narrator on various documentary shows on the History Channel, most notably Ancient Aliens. Bill Haynes, the murder victim with killer sideburns, is played by Tom Simcox, who once studied meditation at an Indian retreat at the same time that the Beatles were staying there. John Lennon even came to suspect his wife Cynthia of having an affair with Simcox, but Cynthia dismissed the idea as preposterous. Lennon would come to refer to Simcox derisively as that Yankee cowboy.
You're really sick.
That's kind of all I have to say about this one. I'm sorry if you were particularly looking forward to my Dawn's Early Light review, but I really don't have many thoughts on it.
I can understand your bitterness.
McGoohan is very good in it, and his scenes are great, while everything else in my opinion is a little dull. Not bad, just dull. As such, I'm afraid this is my least watched of Season 4, as I often find my mind wandering off every time I try to sit through it.
Well, I was pleased.
McGoohan will return to Columbo again and again, but I won't be returning to By Dawn's Early Light anytime soon. Sorry.
I see.